Hello everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Clout Chasers. My name is Kristian, and I'm joined by...
Hrvojes. We are two very competitive players of the One Piece card game, which has been our focus for the last year or so, and is going to be our focus for the foreseeable future. So I think it is appropriate we kind of share our stories of how we got into the game and how we plan to progress within it. So Kristian, you may introduce yourself as you were the first one to start playing the game.
Our history actually begins with another card game called Flesh and Blood, which was our main competitive focus before One Piece was even released. That's where we met, that's where we became friends. And at some point, the tournaments were kind of winding down on Flesh and Blood, and we were looking for the next big competitive thing. And we never expected to find it in a Bandai card game called One Piece. We never even considered Bandai card games as a competitive endeavor. And I think not a lot of people did. Of course, Magic had a competitive scene. Flesh and Blood definitely was gunning for a competitive scene. But no Bandai game really established itself as a competitive endeavor, basically. It all started with us trying, technically me trying the pre-release, the limited battles, and really falling in love with the game. I come from a slightly different background than Hrvoje. I'm a game designer by trade, mathematician by education. So I am really drawn to games from their systemic design. And I really enjoy when games bring something new to the table, as in a different way of approaching concepts we find in other games. For example, tempo, which is like a very interesting concept in card games, is completely different in Magic from the one in Flesh and Blood, right? And of course, One Piece has a completely different idea of what tempo is. So I was predominantly drawn to One Piece from the mechanical side. And I think that the game really doesn't get enough credit for how well designed it is. The fact that your hand draw is connected to your life. So if you are on the defensive, you actually have less options. So you are incentivized to take life and to make the game more exciting and more tense. Is an ingenious concept. And after giving the game due diligence, I was really impressed with it. And I started nagging Hrvoje that this is a game we should at least try. You tried it? What did you think?
So for me, it was also, as Kristian said, we started with Flesh and Blood. And the options to play at a high level in Europe it was a very dry period, let's put it that way. There was only very medium level events in the next half a year. So it was natural that we both wanted to try something else to fill the time. And for me, options were between One Piece and Magic the Gathering. So I actually first tried playing a bit of Magic, modern format. And I played decks which are probably not that interesting, they're very linear in their strategies, like Creativity and Hammer. But I ended up not really enjoying the game that much, coming from a Yu-Gi-Oh background. Those felt like very simple combo decks, which I would equivalent to some very NPC decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, so to speak. I knew I would eventually try One Piece because, unlike Kristian, even before I played the card game, I was familiar with the franchise. I followed the manga regularly. I was caught up fully with it. I never watched the anime because it's way too long. 1,000 episodes is not realistic. I knew I would try the game. And Kristian, whose opinion I obviously value very highly, he recommended it. And there was a Christmas party locals at one of our local game stores. And I was like, sure, build me a deck. I'll give it a go. And I think I played Green Eustace Kid. Mm-hmm. Which was a very interesting deck in OP1 format, had a lot of skill expression. And I think I went 3-2 in those first locals. And I quite enjoyed how the game played, how you were forced to like interact with your opponent at the more like basic level of just understanding card advantage and how the board swings in each other's favor. And yeah, it was just very easy to fall in love with the game, and we quickly started contributing more of our time towards refining like the gameplay and becoming better at it.
And that was before basically the birth of competitive parts of the game. And also, yeah, you mentioned, I knew about One Piece, but I do watch anime, but I wasn't. I watched a few episodes. I was like, But yeah, in the end, after playing the game, I caught up to manga, and I don't know why I never gave it time before, because I really like the whimsical and creative world of it. So I'm actually glad to the game for a lot of things, and one of those things is bringing me to such a wonderful world.
We're both kind of seasoned like weebs, so to speak. One Piece is not like the favorite piece of the medium, but it's like very fun, very enjoyable. So it's like a nice thing to follow.
Definitely, and it also does definitely enrich an experience. Although people say that the game mechanics and the card mechanics are not thematic enough, as in they're not connected to their counterparts in the story, which I think is doing the game a disservice. I think they're at least decent, if not great, at bringing the world of One Piece to life. Because definitely, I think the characters do come off as their counterparts in the show, and also I feel like the core gameplay of One Piece feels like a fight, where you are fighting at each other, wearing each other down, right?
It's like a very strong part of the game experience is actually feeling like the world somehow comes to life, which for me in previous like games I played, like Legend of Runeterra, I had it with some of like the League of Legends champions, which had their own unique gameplays in like the game of League of Legends, but then Legend of Runeterra adapted it to like a card game, and some of them worked really well. Like Twisted Fate was amazing, and then obviously Flesh and Blood itself was it was like a card game which didn't try to like adapt anything specific as a concept, but it ended up like representing combat really well, which was like very nice and thematic for a card game, because it was basically like playing a fighting game with cards. And then One Piece does that for some of its characters like really well. I think Law and all his versions are probably the best example, like the Shambles ability.
Of course. And then Big Mom manipulating life, right? Luffy going through blockers, being unstoppable, and so on. They're
overcoming the odds.
And at that point, the tournaments were just starting, and the beginning tournament experience for One Piece was something. It was basically impossible to get into any tournaments, which was very frustrating, to a point that we both considered not taking the game seriously and not competing in any tournaments. Because
that didn't change much. It's still difficult to get in.
It is, but it's far more doable. And also, we understood that we have to be ready at the exact time the tickets go on sale to be able to buy the tickets. We just take it for granted now. But back then, tickets selling out in the moment that they are available was kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it didn't register. Like no other card game I've played before had anything remotely similar. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, all the big events, like it would take weeks to sell out if they would sell out. In Flesh and Blood, I think I can recall very few events that sold out, and once again took weeks. Yeah, this was just a whole new experience, and it was very frustrating at the beginning, because we're like, we want to play this really cool game that apparently has really good prizes, but you just cannot get into an event because it all fills up instantly. So yeah, we eventually overcame that because we kept trying, and eventually we did get into events, and we did get to perform in those events. So I think a natural part of this continuing this would be explaining our achievements in the game so far. So Kristian, you may begin.
Well, thank you. My biggest achievement would probably be getting second in Treasure Cup Barcelona. I was top 8 in a regional in Toulouse. I was 1 win away from top 64 in Utrecht at the championship finals. And aside from a lot of top 32s, top 16s, top 64s, I ended every ranked season in the new ranked server in the first place. Although now I hear that there's a new ranked server, which I didn't dabble into much, so that's next on the agenda. And of course, we both ended up being third in a 3v3 in Glasgow.
I thought you would forget that one.
I mean, it's some parts of that were quite unforgettable. However, my achievements are vastly overshadowed by yours. So if anyone listening to this doesn't know, please remind them. What did you do in One Piece card game?
So I guess most recently, because we were filming this after Worlds, I did get second at the World Championship, so that's probably the biggest one, or definitely the biggest one. But yeah, there was a line of success leading up to that. I got second at the European Championship finals in January in Utrecht, which was amazing, 2,500 players. I had the first place in the Bielefeld regional, where I went in OPO3 format, where I went fully undefeated with Zoro for the entire duration of the tournament. That's probably the one I'm most proud of, which sounds kind of weird, but it was like
it was the first big tournament you performed well, and I still remember us carrying you after that last game.
Yeah, it was like the breakout performance, so to speak, because I did have some top 8s and top 16s before that, but that's like really where I felt really good about my results. And then I guess OPO5 in general has been very nice to me. I had like a top 32 in the recent No Heroes Online. I had the top 8 in Treasure Cup Paris. And yeah, just several regional and Treasure Cup top 16s, top 32s. And I haven't really dabbled in the ranked server as much as Kristian has, mainly because I did keep my practice with Kristian and a few other select people. But yeah, a quite nice line of achievements I'm proud of, and I hope we will continue to do as well in the future.
And the rest is to tell you a little bit about what our plans are for this channel, what can you expect from us, and what our motivation is, and what we want to bring to you. So,
so first, why we are Clout Chasers? What does that mean? So once again, that is a thing we are carrying over from playing Flesh and Blood, where we played in a team league at one point, where we just gathered a bunch of friends. Well, not us, another friend did it, but he named us Clout Chasers quite comedically, because we were not very accomplished in Flesh and Blood at that stage. It was before the first Pro Tour, where basically the entire competitive scene of Flesh and Blood was restricted to America and Oceania. So like we still had to have our breakthrough performances. But yeah, we had a lot of fun in that ranked league. We made some, I would say, great friendships that even though we don't play Flesh and Blood as actively now, we still nurture.
Definitely.
We just covered Frank and Benson and the rest of the gang, Max, Jody.
We love you all.
It felt like a natural continuation that once we start working seriously, competitively in One Piece together, that we kind of carry on that Clout Chasers mantle, because we do feel like it's a reasonably strong part of our identity as competitive players. So you might see us crack some jokes which are not very seriously minded, because we do all our clown cards, buggy, bingo, and such. But we sure will try our best to create some competitive content for you guys, which brings us to the topic of our goals for this channel, for our Patreon. So, Kristian, you may take over.
even though having fun is definitely what we really enjoy about games, fundamentally we are competitive players, which we said quite a few times in these several minutes, and that's what we want to bring to you. We take this game very seriously. We dedicate a lot of time to it, and therefore we want to bring expertise and our skill set to you. So specifically, highly skilled, competitive knowledge, insights, and so forth. Which means that here on YouTube, you can expect a podcast of the two of us, maybe some guests, every Wednesday. You can expect some gameplay highlights, whether that is from our locals, whether that is from a ranked league. You will get some gameplay footage every Saturday. And all of our highly competitive and highly, how should I put it? Highly high effort content, as, for example, a very in-depth article or a very in-depth guide to a deck. All of that you can find on our Patreon, where we go super in-depth into a lot of topics. And you can even get a taste of that. You can find 2 of our articles for free on our Patreon. That is my guide to Purple Luffy, Poofy, and Hrvoje's guide to Sakazuki. Those guides will also be a benchmark for us, and you can also see what you can expect from us by reading those guides, which we put a lot of effort into, and we are quite proud.
Yeah, they're slightly outdated. There was a lot of scheduling problems because of me going to Worlds.
Because of you going to the Worlds, yeah.
So
and also, you can expect a better cam quality as we are not streaming across the continents in the future.
Yeah, for the record, it looks amazing on my screen, but yeah,
it looks amazing on my screen too. But
the quality I have is probably not the best for streaming the internet. That is. But yeah, they might be outdated, but the concepts they introduce are still, I think, quite an interesting thing to look at. Just like, it's difficult to explain, but seeing the perspective of somebody else and how they approach the game, I still think is quite valuable. And obviously, in regards to the Sakazuki article, it's going to be updated for OPO6 and worked on as we move along with the format.
And mainly, you can see how we work and what you can expect from us going forward. Okay, aside from that, our next section would be questions from the audience, and that's going to be a very fast section this week because we didn't get any questions. So please send us anything you want answered, and we'll do our best. And now to our main topic of today's podcast, which is
impressions from Worlds. Because I just played Worlds, which was like the biggest tournament so far.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the tournament itself.
So I think the first thing that stands out about the tournament is the structure itself. It's like obviously a very high stakes tournament. There's like big prizes, region and bragging rights, everything like that on the line. But it's only 16 players. 2 from Europe, 2 from North America, 1 from Latin America, 1 from Oceania, 2 from China, 2 from Southeast Asia, and 6 from Japan.
6.
And the way everybody qualified was quite different because, first of all, we didn't share formats. Like in the West, we all played OPO5, which meant we had less demanding preparation for the tournament itself because the only change in the format was the UTA starter deck. But we also had to qualify through like very large tournaments of 500 people in like Latin America and Oceania and 2,000 or more people in Europe and North America. Whereas for the Asian countries, they had like a ladder system. There was like 4 stages of qualifying, each one like more and more exclusive, invite only. and they played, I believe, format and a half in advance EBO1 for Japan and Southeast Asia. And China, interestingly enough, they had qualifiers in December, so they actually also qualified with OPO5, but way earlier than us. Which I don't think Kristian knew, because I see him looking surprised, and I just realized, I didn't have that information until talking to Chinese players at Worlds either. So, that's actually another good point. The differing levels of coverage for different regions also made like preparation kind of odd, because in the lead up to the tournament, we had like no idea about the Chinese players. We had no idea like who qualified with what they were going to bring, who even are the players. And obviously for Japan and Southeast Asia, the main question was like, they're going back to formats, which decks are they going to bring? So it was quite interesting to look at the tournament from that perspective. Like, how do you combine all these like different regions into one tournament and prepare for it?
Regarding the general preparation, you did offhandedly mention UTA, but we did do our due diligence. We tested UTA quite a bit. In the end, we decided it's not an issue for Sakazuki, and we were very comfortable with your pick of remaining on Sakazuki. Is there anything else regarding the tournament prep itself you would like to mention?
Yeah. So I guess the main thing is Fabian and I kind of partnered up. We decided to test together because, after all, the tournament's high stakes were for us, and we do both have regional pride. We wanted Europe to take the throne. We did test together, mainly in the mirrors, but also some other matchups. This was like the only, I would say, special thing, because as Kristian said, Lee tested UTA. In my case, also, I know Kai from Cross AI's Patreon writes great articles. At one point, he wrote the article for UTA, and I was like, I probably save a lot of time if I read his article and just assert on some thoughts, some lines of thought that I have, and that did happen. Then I was confident that Sakazuki is not going to have issues with UTA, and that no serious player should bring UTA to the tournament, which ended up unsurprisingly being true. For the level of preparation, as I said, we had basically the same format as the European finals, which meant that a lot of previous preparation was still valid. It was mostly down to like making sure I keep the muscle memory up and practice up. In retrospect, some of the things and plays I did at Worlds I'm not happy with. Nerves did get to me a little bit. But generally, I think the preparation was at a satisfying level.
I have to say you're very, very humble. I think us competitive players are never happy with our performances. We always understand we could have done better, and we can, especially once we do game reviews, we notice quite a few little flaws in our plays, but you are selling yourself short, my man. Like, you are one of the coolest heads while you're playing, and you performed really well.
The result is I forgot to show the guy, but it's this guy. Look at him. Woo. The result is this. But the way it looks on stream is I went on stream and I lost 4 games, and I haven't won a single one. Obviously, I won every game off stream, and I performed really well off stream, despite the unfortunate games on stream. But the look itself perhaps is not the nicest to the rest of the world.
You can just go with you being a shy guy, and that's it. And the camera gets.
Camera shy. We don't mind the fact that I didn't really lose feature matches up to Worlds at any point, except for final, where I lost to Fabian 2-1 with that stupid mistake.
Okay. At the end, how about Japan in general? You're coming it with very high expectations. It's a land of wonder for us Europeans. Like, we are very, very looking at Japan as a super interesting country to visit. How's your trip been so far?
So obviously culturally it's very different, and I have followed I won't say Japanese culture. I followed anime and manga since 2014 or 2015. So I do have some I would say tangential interest in Japanese culture, but obviously I'm not too familiar with it. So a lot of the things I experienced here were still really new. For starters, it's a very clean country. Like in Europe, there's like no place that's as clean as the average Japanese city, which is surprising because there's no trash cans anywhere on the street. You just have to like you cannot toss your trash on the street. You have to like put it in your pocket and dispose of it like when you're back at your room and stuff. So that's like definitely the first thing that strikes you is like there's no littering on the street. Everything is very clean and like it feels weird that you can just take a very nice photo of any place because there's just no rubbish. It's like shows a lot about how the respectful of other people the culture itself is. But yeah, it's also very well organized. Like public transport just runs very smoothly. A lot of things. I guess the word I'm trying to describe is convenience. A lot of things that I came to perceive about the Japanese society boil down to like convenience. Your life is in some aspects maybe easier, and I mean I guess that's a really nice thing because for visiting Japan, I know there's like underlying issues in the society like the terrible work culture and probably some corruption on political level or whatever, nepotism. I
who
don't know.
doesn't have corrupt politicians?
I mean, we come from the Balkans, like we know best. We are not going to talk about Todoric or what's going on in Croatia right now.
Yeah, that's going to be a different podcast.
Yeah, with some guests maybe. But yeah, it's just like there's so many things that are very convenient. The food is, I wouldn't say. I also had higher expectations for food. I thought it would be like blow my mind at every corner, like wherever I go, the food would be amazing. But honestly, it's like compared to back home, it's like average to below average even, which might sound surprising, but I think like the biggest upselling point is like there's so much variety. You can get anything whenever you want at very affordable and good prices. Like eating out in Japan is actually cheaper than eating out in Croatia, even though I think for majority of the food, the quality of meal will not be as good as in Croatia. It's like cheaper, and it's not that much worse. And then there's still some types of food which are like obviously native to Japan, like ramen and sushi, which are miles ahead of anything Croatia will ever be able to offer. So yeah, it's just a very convenient society. Like when I first arrived and needed public transport, like you can just get a Suica card on your phone and just like tap it and go through gates and like pay for your trips that way. There's like no hassle with tickets. Everything works with it. You can even pay like on vending machines with it. You can use it for so many different things. It's like a very unified, well-organized system that I don't know. I would just love to see replicated in more countries because it makes life easier in many ways.
And are the vending machines also everywhere, as they keep telling us?
Oh yeah, not only are they everywhere, they have everything. Like you can get like ice cream, you can get dried meats, like obviously all the gachapon or whatever with toys and
very important
whatnot. And they're like at every step. It's so amazing that there's like machines that you put a bill into just to exchange it for coins, so you can have it to pay for different. Like so the society almost runs on coins. Basically, yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Actually, like, it's not wrong to say their society runs on like coins, because I have a massive stack in my room right now, and there's so many coins. There's downsides to coins, but I understand when like characters in like Naruto or whatever have like a little special coin bag frog, because you definitely need it in Japan.
Okay, and you'll definitely be richer with a lot more impressions once you get back home. But
yeah, well, we're the biggest part of it, actually, that there's so much like manga, like generally that part of the culture, anime, manga, it's everywhere. Like obviously Japan is in. I skipped over like the most important part. One Piece is huge in Japan. Like they have locals. I went with some Americans to a local store, and it's unofficial locals. So it's not like the Bandai sanctioned locals. And the cap was 82 players, and I was like one of 15 people who did not get in because the wait list like got cut off because too many people showed up. I was like, "What's happening? Like, this is unofficial tournament. Why are there so many people?"
I mean, and we are impressed that we have 30 people relatively regularly at our locals, and we're like, this is insane. But
So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not too sad about missing out on those locals because when I went down the stairs to check up on it, it looked like a very crowded place, like 82 players in a relatively small area because Surface comes at a premium in Japan. Yeah, it was very cramped, and for someone of taller stature, it did not look like a comfortable place to be and try to interact with people.
You mentioned that quite a few times that you are not built for Japan.
Yeah, definitely a lot of places. There's some toilets and like restaurants and stuff that where when I get through the door, I have to like maneuver to close the door behind me and to sit on the. It's just obviously too tall. And even like on the feature match at Worlds, like the gap that you have for your legs in front of the chair is so tiny. I had to lean forward the entire time I was playing, and it made it very awkward because to reach the table and do any actions, I just had to sit rather uncomfortably. And I'm not using it as an excuse. It was just like I think a piece of feedback one day to take into account for future events.
People are sometimes taller.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's bring this show slowly to a wrap. We like to end the podcast on a little segment we call Diamond in the Rough. And we think that there's a lot of really interesting cards that get severely overlooked by the community at large. And quite a few of them are, if not playable, they're at least strong enough that they're gonna be playable at some point in the game. And I think that they don't get enough recognition and not enough thought put into why are they strong and why are they not getting played. So at the end of it,
it's like. So why would we make it such a segment? It's because we think innovation is important. Like finding the right card for a deck can like elevate that deck so much. It's something that I think Kristian. I'm not sure if he's the originator of the idea, but like Missile Sunday and Purple Luffy decks is something he played since like almost November, but I think early December.
Very, very.
It was just like such a huge consistency boost, and like that's the deck he spammed to get rank 1 in the ranked solo ladder. He also did very well with it in the Paris Treasure Cup 3v3 event on Sunday, where he beat a lot of like amazing European players. Like we played 3v3 against the K2 team. There was also I'm forgetting what they're called. I'm sorry, but point is against some of the top European players such as like Antonino Borzi was at one point, Giovanni Solacore Oliva, I think. Like the Missile Sunday was like a very strong addition to the deck.
Definitely.
That people did not expect that.
El Nino said that it was impossible to beat me when we met for the 10th time on the ranked server, and I beat him. And
obviously he's one of the best players in Europe, so it was like, if it's not something you expect, because somebody has this amazing card that elevates your deck and people don't expect it, it's going to be such a huge advantage. Because even if they're amazing, if they don't know your strategy, you get such a huge like edge. So looking at cards that can provide that edge is very relevant.
Currently, as we have, I wouldn't say a tier 0 deck, but maybe even a tier 0 deck with Sakazuki, that has been less important in this format, but we definitely expect it to be far more important in future formats, right? So we really would like to bring some cards to light, talk about them, because we really think that the community as a whole is just super focused on a few decks and a few cards, and they're missing the bigger picture. Most of these cards do have a reason why they're not getting played, but they're just one card or one set away from possibly being broken. And our first card for this segment is...
Oh, am I introducing it? Okay, nice, because I really like this card. So it is from Opio 5, and it's a card you might not even remember exists, because I think it's printed as a common. It's the Wano Brook, so Onekichi. And he has a very inconspicuous effect of On play, if you have 8 or more Dawn cards on your field, give up to 2 of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power during this turn. And he has 4 cost, 6,000 power, which is like the vanilla stat line. And that should already be like an indicator, hey, this card might be really good.
He doesn't have a counter, which it can also be a hint that the card is pretty good. But how good it is exactly? Well, let's break it down a bit. So, first of all, one of the downside is that you have to... It's basically an 8 cost, which in a way almost gives you back mana. As in, you really want to play him on 8 to get the full value, but you can also play him on 4 as well if you don't have any other plays. You just got a vanilla out of your dawns. The reduction itself is very strong. Like, minus 2k is significant enough that you can get a lot of value out of it. Also, whenever a card affects multiple cards, that effect is at a very steep premium usually in One Piece. Most of the cards usually affect a single card. So getting a value on 2 different cards is quite potent. The card this card is most comparable to is probably Ace, which costs a lot more. Sure, it has Rush. But it costs, as I said, a lot more. And we all know that Ace is one of the best cards in the game.
Yeah, so one thing that also cannot be overlooked is power reduction, how powerful it is. Because realistically, Zoro was kind of running the meta alongside Whitebeard for like 3 sets in a row. And one major aspect of his power was Gordon and Utama, who would just apply convenient power reductions. And Whitebeard obviously also had access to Ace. Zoro sometimes take Bonenko. It's just a very strong way to guarantee that bodies are removed at little to no cost to yourself. It's obviously part of the power budget of cards that is very carefully balanced most of the time, because unlike cost reduction that Black has access to, which is Sakazuki abusing very heavily in this format, power reduction is like very straightforward. Like you reduce the power of something, and now that something is killable by the small units, and it comes at little to no additional investment. And yeah, it's basically when you reduce the power of something, everything that attacks that something gains like the Moby Dick effect. Like everything is buffed. Your entire board is buffed against it, and that makes for very cheap and efficient trades where your opponent is not incentivized to defend the character whose power is reduced. So you kind of remove a lot of choice from your opponent by forcing them to give up units that they would not like to give up. So I guess a thing we could talk about is why is this card actually not being played right now.
And one of the part is that, yes, you get a lot of value if you can attack into the cards your opponent reduced. Aside from the tempo consideration that the cards had to be attacked, the other problem is that you basically need something to attack into. And the strongest way to do that was usually with a local searcher, wherever you had a very small body, which can now suddenly attack into much bigger things. That is where you get the most value. And especially if you attack with the little things, your opponent is very incentivized to not defend, because if he defends, then he still has like a leak in his ship, as in he still has a very easy target to hit into, right? The other part is...
Yeah, because the strong attacks always follow like the small ones, so they're not going to give up cards to just defend something that has been reduced.
And currently, the strongest purple deck is Purple Luffy, and I guess red purple Luffy. And both of those decks are... I mean, red purple Luffy has some other problems. He is very focused on the top end. So he does have searchers, but he has absolutely no room for an unknown counter card. So it's a highly specific deck which doesn't play on the same axis as other decks, being a 6k leader and so forth. While Poofy, the whole strength of the deck is that you can basically skip all the small drops and just play with very valuable bodies. And therefore the reduction is less potent there. There's also one other part of reduction, and that is you can couple it with something very specific to get a lot of value, which another color does best.
The red removal is what you're going after.
Definitely.
So I guess I can explain that one. Red obviously abused power reduction well because it had power-based removal, which is something only red currently has in the game. Which means that if you were to abuse this effect in a deck that had removal, you would have to couple it with red, which means you need a leader in red-purple, which makes good use of the power reduction and can still run events which remove units, such as like Fire Fist from OPO3 or OPO5 or the Jet Pistol. And currently, the options for those leaders are limited. As Kristian said, red-purple Wolfie, first of all, he has very little life. At 3 life, he cannot afford non-counter cards which do not contribute towards his main game plan. And his main game plan is to drop really big bodies and use them to close out games without the opponent getting much say, because he just rams really fast, gets big bodies, and hopes to win really fast. And then there's red-purple Law. Red-purple Law would like to use this card because it has the strong power reduction effect, similar to Ace, which red-purple Law sometimes runs. But what is the problem with red-purple Law? You need 8 Dawn on the board. And that can be a problem to consistently achieve in red-purple Law because, well, you do not want to use Shambles too much and reduce your Dawn to the point where you cannot play. You also don't want to fall too far behind schedule, because red-purple Law is a deck that runs a lot of medium-sized units, and you need to constantly be pressuring, because eventually you're going to run out of gas. The deck doesn't have any natural ways of generating advantage, so to actually win the game, you need to start pushing at some point, and that usually means you will not have the luxury of working with 8 Dawn very often, which would make Brook a subpar choice, because at the point at which you can play him, his power reduction does not actually put things into Law's range usually. There's also the red-purple kid, which I'll be honest, we do not test much. We do not think the leader by itself had enough potential to require detailed testing. We might be wrong. We'll probably
we did
revisit
some testing. We built a deck, we played some games, but there's maybe sometimes. Probably.
Yeah, there's real potential is in the body battles. Just letting you know, starting on 3 life, you remove the downside effect, and just start with 3 life. But yeah, and then there's also the red-purple Uta, which is coming out in OPS6. She has her own power reduction effect attached to the leader, which also rams her. But yeah, that's also something we have yet to test because she's only now coming out. We might have a real interesting tech card for red-purple Uta in the near future. But yeah, point is you require a very specific color combination to abuse the removal aspect of the card, which is not always going to be easily achievable because you need what's the word I'm looking for, overlap between archetypes. And that's actually where a lot of Honekichi's future potential comes from. He is a Straw Hat type because he is a Straw Hat. So in the future, he's searchable by red Searcher Nami, and that could also make him a very consistent piece of a devastating strategy because, once again, he has vanilla stat line. And when we look at powerful cards, like Robochi, 4-cost 6k, even if he doesn't get his effect from 2 targets, he's still a very strong card. You love seeing him, you love playing him. There's also the Boa coming out in OPO7. She is vanilla stat with at 6 cost, 8,000 power. Very strong effect. Those are cards where potential is overflowing, and they're just waiting for the right kind of support.
Once again, we are not preaching that Honekichi is. You should just jam Honekichi in your deck. What we are trying to do with this segment is seriously consider a card on its own merit and see the potential it has in future deck building. We really have to stress this enough. No, the time is not now for Honikichi, but the time might be coming, because the card in and of itself is quite strong.
Yeah, even, who knows, it might be a consideration in the future and not end up being played. We had several cases of that in the past. Like, for example, for Euro Championship finals, a card we considered strongly for Sakazuki was actually the starter deck 3 Sentomaru with one of each Pacifista. It was an interesting choice because he was a Navy card, and you could, in Sakazuki, always cycle away the Pacifista that you draw, and then you could use Robucci and Mancheri to put them back into the bottom of the deck. So in theory, you had like access to a very repeatable, basically infinite Sentomaru engine. It didn't work out the best in the mirror. Like, there were matchup considerations to consider. But it's like, if you consider these cards, which aren't necessarily obvious, you might like discover like plays and abilities that make some matchups a lot easier than they used to be. And then you just like weighing them against the meta. Like, are they the right thing to do? Because yeah, the cards might be strong. They might not, but it might not be the right time for them.
Yeah, that was a great example. Yes, we put a lot of time to see whether that package is something we are going to go with, because the value of the package is quite high. It ended up not being good enough in the meta, but this kind of thinking is what we will definitely propel you as a One Piece player. Okay, and with that, we are ending our first episode. You'll see us again next week. Until then, sayonara.
Bye-bye.